You ever felt like, no matter how hard you tried, something inside you just wouldn't change? How many times have you looked in the mirror and promised yourself that this time it would be different? How many times have you tried external changes, hoping they would transform who you are inside? What if I told you that true transformation doesn't come from outside, but from within you, on a deeper level than we imagine? What you seek outside yourself is, in fact, a projection of what you already have within. Louise Hay. This sentence revolutionized the lives of millions of people around the world. But what does it really mean? It means that when we seek love, we look outside for the love that already exists within us. When we seek peace, we are looking for the peace our soul already knows. When we desire abundance, we are trying to find the inner richness that has always been there. This means that when we seek change, we often forget to look within. We spend years trying to change jobs, relationships, cities, physical appearance, thinking that these external changes will finally bring us the happiness we seek. But true transformation begins when we stop chasing external solutions and start diving deep into our inner world. Spiritual awakening is not a single dramatic event. It's a gradual process of reconnection with our deepest essence. It's like waking up from a very long dream, where we finally realize that everything we needed has always been within us. Let's explore how this inner transformation can truly change everything around us, creating a life that reflects our true nature. Louise Hay, one of the great masters of self-help, always believed that our words have immense power. Born into a dysfunctional family, abused in childhood, diagnosed with cancer in adulthood, Louise discovered that healing was not just in conventional medicines or therapies, but in the transformative power of the words she directed to herself. In her revolutionary book, You Can Heal Your Life, she states, "What you say to yourself and others is the key to creating your reality." But Louise wasn't talking about superficial positive thinking. She was revealing a profound truth about how our inner language literally shapes our life experience. Think for a moment. How many times a day do you criticize yourself? How many times do you tell yourself, "I can't, I don't deserve it, I'm not good enough"? These words are not just innocent thoughts, they are powerful commands that your subconscious receives and transforms into reality. Every negative word you direct to yourself is like a seed planted in the garden of your mind, which will inevitably sprout and manifest in your life. The words we use, both spoken and thought, have the ability to shape what we experience in the world. This happens because our subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It simply accepts as truth what we constantly repeat to ourselves. The law of attraction, popularized by Hay, is not just about thinking positively, but about aligning our words and feelings with what we desire. It's about creating a new inner narrative, a new way of relating to yourself. When you change your inner dialogue from critical to compassionate, from destructive to constructive, something magical happens. When you start talking to yourself with kindness, seeing yourself in a positive light, the world around you begins to reflect this in practical ways. It's no coincidence, it's cause and effect. Your outer world is always a reflection of your inner world. People start treating you better because you treat yourself better. Opportunities appear because you see yourself as someone who deserves opportunities. What you seek outside yourself is, in fact, a projection of what you already have within. So change begins with what you say, think, and feel, not with what you see. If you want more peace, more love, more abundance, start speaking and thinking like someone who already has it. Louise Hay taught us that we are the authors of our own lives, and words are our pen. Neville Goddard, a master of positive thinking and mental creation, took the concept of inner transformation to an even deeper level. Born in Barbados at the beginning of the 20th century, Goddard spent his life studying the mysteries of the human mind and discovered something revolutionary. The true power to change our lives lies not just in thoughts, but in the mastery of our feelings. For Goddard, feeling is the key to lasting impressions on the subconscious. He wasn't talking about superficial emotions, but about deep states of being. He stated, "Feeling is the only medium through which you can communicate your truth to the subconscious." But what exactly did he mean by that? Goddard discovered that the subconscious, that deep part of our mind that controls 95% of our behaviors, does not respond to words or images alone. He responds to the feeling that accompanies those words and images. It is the feeling that gives life to our desires and transforms them into reality. Think about how you feel when you are truly in love. It's not just a thought of "I love this person." It's a sensation that takes over your entire being. Your heart races, you smile for no reason, you feel alive in a different way. This is the type of feeling Goddard was describing, something that transcends the mental and becomes a complete experience of being. What he meant was that it's not enough to just think about something, you need to truly feel as if it's already true. This is the secret most people don't understand about manifestation. They visualize, affirm, repeat mantras, but they do it all mechanically, without the essential ingredient, the feeling of already having what they desire. For example, if you want a new job or a relationship, it's not enough to visualize yourself having these things. You need to start feeling as if you already have them. How would you feel walking through the office of your dream job? How would the feeling of confidence, accomplishment, purpose be like? How would you feel waking up next to the person you love? What would the feeling of security, love, completeness be? The feeling generates a vibration that enters directly into the subconscious and shapes your reality. It's like you're reprogramming the computer of your mind with new software. The subconscious, upon receiving this new programming through feeling, automatically begins to reorganize your life so that it reflects this new inner reality. Goddard taught that this change does not occur when we merely wish or visualize superficially, but when we feel within us that we are already living the life we want. It is this sensation of already having that communicates to the universe and to our subconscious that we are ready to receive what we desire. Feeling is the language the universe understands. Here we arrive at the deepest and perhaps most challenging turning point of the entire spiritual journey, the detachment from the ego. Carl Jung, the master of analytical psychology and one of the most profound thinkers of the 20th century, spoke of a transformative process known as individuation, a journey that can completely change who you think you are. Individuation is the journey of becoming who you truly are, said Jung. But this seemingly simple phrase hides immense complexity. For Jung, becoming who you truly are first means discovering who you are not. It means deconstructing all the masks, all the roles, all the false identities you've built throughout life. The ego, that part of us that identifies with our name, our profession, our achievements, our social roles, is not necessarily our enemy. It has been useful for our survival and functioning in the world. But Jung discovered that at some point in life, especially when we enter the second half of existence, the ego needs to be transcended so that we can access our true essence. For Jung, spiritual awakening is not a state of instant happiness or enlightenment, often portrayed in many superficial teachings. On the contrary, it is often preceded by an uncomfortable void, a period Jung called the dark night of the soul, a time when the ego loses its power, and for a while, you may feel completely lost. This void is not a flaw in the process. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It is, in fact, a necessary preparation for something new. It's like a chrysalis. For the butterfly to be born, the caterpillar literally needs to dissolve. There is no gentle transformation from caterpillar to butterfly. There is a complete dissolution, followed by a reconstruction into a completely new form. Jung believed that the ego, the persona with which we identify throughout life, begins to crumble during the process of individuation. This persona includes all the ways we learn to behave to be accepted by society, by family, by colleagues. It includes all the "I should be this way" and "I need to do this to be loved." This process is profoundly painful, as we are deconstructing everything we thought we were. It's like discovering that the house you lived in your whole life wasn't really your home, but just a temporary place. Fear arises. If I'm not who I always thought I was, then who am I? Jung understood that this disorientation is inevitable. He himself went through intense periods of existential questioning, which he documented in his famous Red Book. He knew that when we begin to deeply question our identity, when we stop automatically identifying with our roles and achievements, a temporary void arises. But this void is actually a sacred space. It is the space where our true self can finally emerge. Jung discovered that beneath all the layers of the ego, there is something he called the self, our deepest essence, our true nature, what we are beyond all roles and identifications. This process is necessary for us to emerge as more authentic beings, aligned with our true self, no longer living to impress others or fulfill external expectations, but living from our deepest truth. It is a rebirth, but every rebirth first requires a symbolic death of what we were before. When the ego begins to crumble, what emerges is silence. Not outer silence, but a deep inner silence. This silence can seem frightening to those accustomed to the constant noise of the egoic mind, always planning, always worrying, always trying to control everything. This inner silence is completely different from what our society has taught us to value. We live in a culture that idolizes constant action, incessant productivity, doing for doing's sake. We are taught that our value is directly linked to what we do, what we achieve, how busy we are. That's why when the ego dissolves and this silence emerges, our first reaction is panic. Where is my motivation? Why don't I feel like pursuing those goals that once seemed so important anymore? Why do the things that excited me before now seem empty? These are natural questions that arise during this process of transformation. Jung understood this phenomenon deeply. He knew that this period of silence and apparent emptiness is not clinical depression, although it can be confused with it. It is in fact a necessary transitional state. Like land that needs to lie fallow before a new planting, our psyche needs this period of quietude to reorganize itself on a deeper level. The transformation that occurs when the ego is set aside is not immediate and is often confused with apathy or lack of motivation. But this is just a symptom of the dissolution of the old self. It's as if you had spent your whole life driving a car at high speed, and suddenly you needed to stop completely to change the engine. The standstill period may seem unproductive, but it is essential for you to continue your journey with much more power and efficiency. Carl Jung said that the light you seek comes from the darkness, and it is in this space of uncertainty, where the ego no longer has the strength to dictate the rules, that true transformation occurs. This darkness is not something negative we should avoid, but a cosmic womb where our new self is being gestated. During this period, many people make the mistake of trying to speed up the process or interpreting this phase as a setback. They try to force old motivation, artificially recreate the ego's enthusiasm, or even worse, judge themselves as failures for not feeling the same energy as before. The emptiness we feel when the old self disappears is, in fact, a fertile ground for the new energy, for the true motivation. It's like cleaning a garden that was full of weeds. For a while it seems empty and desolate, but this cleaning is necessary for truly beautiful plants to grow. This new motivation that eventually emerges is qualitatively different from egoic motivation. It is no longer about achieving external goals to prove our worth or fill an inner void through external achievements. It comes from the pure essence of being, from the soul's natural desire to express itself authentically in the world. It is in this silence that we learn for the first time to hear our true voice, no longer muffled by the ego's desperate cries for attention and validation. It is in this void that we discover that we are not truly empty, but finally free from the noise that prevented us from hearing our deepest essence. As we go through this profound process of transformation, something absolutely incredible begins to emerge from the ashes of the old self, our true self. Not the edited version, not the version we thought we should be, but the authentic being that was hidden under layers and layers of social conditioning, family expectations, and acquired fears. This true self is not something we need to create or invent. It has always been there, patiently waiting to be discovered, like a masterful work of art waiting for the layers of old paint to be removed to reveal its original beauty. Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming a unique, indivisible, authentic individual. When we finally let go of the ego and the false identity, something extraordinary happens. We begin to live in accordance with our deepest values, no longer motivated by a desperate search for external approval, no longer chasing goals that were not truly ours, but living for the pure desire to simply be who we are in our essence. True freedom comes when we free ourselves from the world's expectations and begin to live according to our truth. Louise Hay. This freedom is not the superficial freedom of doing what we want when we want. It is the profound freedom of being who we really are, without masks, without pretenses, without fear of judgment. And this is what individuation and true transformation bring us: the freedom to be who we really are. But this freedom comes with immense responsibility, the responsibility to live our truth, even when that means going against the expectations of others, even when that means choosing a less conventional path. What emerges from this process is not the destruction of the ego, but its healthy integration. The ego doesn't disappear, but becomes an integrated part of our true essence, like a faithful servant instead of a dictatorial tyrant. It still has its practical functions. It helps us navigate the world, make practical decisions, relate to others. But now it serves something greater: our authenticity. The motivation that emerges from this process is completely different from egoic motivation. It is no longer about achieving external goals to prove our worth or fill an inner void. It is about living in alignment with our soul, expressing our truth without fear or shame. This new motivation is organic, natural, sustainable. It doesn't depend on external rewards or recognition from others. It comes from the pure pleasure of expressing who we truly are. It's like the difference between an artificial plant that needs to be constantly maintained and a real plant that grows naturally when given the right conditions. When we live from this authentic place, our actions have a different power. They carry the strength of truth, the energy of integrity. People feel it. Opportunities arise naturally. Relationships become deeper and more meaningful. Life ceases to be a constant struggle against who we are to become a natural expression of our essence. The purpose that emerges is not something grandiose that we need to discover through techniques or exercises. It arises naturally when we remove everything that is not authentically us. It's as if our soul can finally breathe and show its true nature to the world. A fundamental part of the spiritual transformation journey is facing and healing the wounds of the past. We cannot truly emerge as our authentic selves while still carrying the weight of unresolved traumas, unprocessed hurts, and destructive patterns that repeat in our lives. Louise Hay, who transformed her own pain into wisdom for millions of people, always emphasized the revolutionary power of forgiveness, both of others and of ourselves. Her own story is a powerful testament to this truth. Sexually abused in childhood, abandoned, rejected, she could have become a permanent victim of her past. Instead, she chose the path of inner healing. She said, "Forgiveness is letting go of the pain you carry." But Louise wasn't talking about superficial forgiveness, about just forgetting or pretending things didn't happen. She was talking about a deep process of energetic release, where we stop allowing past experiences to continue dictating our present reality. Forgiveness, in Louise Hay's understanding, is essentially an act of self-love. When we refuse to forgive, whether others or ourselves, we are essentially choosing to carry poison in our energetic system. It's like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies. The only one who suffers from our inability to forgive is ourselves. But this process of inner healing is not something that happens all at once, as many people expect. It's not like taking a pill and being cured the next day. It's a gradual release, layer by layer, of what no longer serves us. Like peeling an onion, sometimes we cry in the process, but each layer removed brings us closer to our authentic center. Louise discovered that many of the physical ailments we develop are manifestations of unhealed emotional wounds. In her work, she mapped the connection between specific emotional patterns and corresponding physical problems. For example, back problems frequently related to feelings of lack of support, digestive problems linked to the inability to digest life experiences, skin problems related to issues of self-acceptance. By releasing these accumulated negative energies, whether through forgiveness, therapy, meditation, creative expression, or any method that resonates with us, we are creating space for love, peace, and true abundance. It's like cleaning a dirty glass before serving pure water. The glass always had the capacity to hold pure water, but first it needed to be cleaned. Spiritual transformation, therefore, is not just about changing what is outside of us, but about cleaning and healing the energies of the past that prevent us from living fully in the present. It's about releasing the unconscious patterns that keep us trapped in repetitive cycles of suffering. Jung also understood this process deeply. He called these unresolved patterns complexes, emotional charges that live in our unconscious and influence our behavior in ways we frequently don't perceive. Individuation, for Jung, necessarily included the process of bringing these complexes to consciousness and integrating them in a healthy way. This inner healing work is both individual and collective. When we heal our own wounds, we not only free ourselves, but we also break generational patterns that may have been transmitted through our families for decades or even centuries. We become healed ancestors for future generations. When we undergo a true spiritual transformation, something fundamental changes in how we perceive and interpret the reality around us. It's as if, suddenly, we received new glasses after years of seeing the world blurry. The same situations, the same people, the same challenges are there, but our perception of them is completely transformed. What once seemed challenging, impossible, or unfair now can be seen as an opportunity for growth, a chance to apply our new consciousness, an invitation to demonstrate our inner strength. This change of perception is not forced positive thinking or denial of reality, but a deeper understanding of how life truly works. Carl Jung spoke extensively about the importance of seeing beyond the surface, of looking at reality with a perspective that transcends the obvious appearances. Jung understood that our perception of reality is always filtered through our beliefs, fears, desires, and past experiences. When these filters are cleaned through the process of individuation, we begin to see life much more clearly and broadly. This is the stage where we stop being victims of circumstances and become the conscious creators of our own reality. It's not that we develop magical powers to control everything around us, but we understand that our response to circumstances is always a choice, and it is this choice that determines our life experience. For example, a person who loses their job can see this as a tragedy, an injustice, a proof that life is cruel. Or they can see it as an opportunity to reevaluate their career, a push to seek something that truly fulfills them, a chance to discover talents that they didn't know they had. The situation is the same, but the perception and consequently the experience is completely different. Jung discovered that when we integrate our shadows, the aspects of ourselves that we reject or deny, and transcend the limitations of the ego, we develop what he called the transcendent function, the ability to see situations from multiple perspectives simultaneously, including perspectives that were previously inaccessible to us. It's not that the world magically changes when we undergo a spiritual transformation. The same physical laws continue to operate. The same practical challenges of life continue to exist, but our perception of it changes deeply, and with that, our interaction with it also completely transforms. We begin to perceive patterns that were previously invisible to us. We see how our internal beliefs manifest in our external reality. We notice how our energy and attitude affect the people around us, and, consequently, how the world responds to us. We understand that we have always been co-creators of our experience, but now we do so consciously and intentionally. The reality around us begins to reflect our internal transformation, not by magic, but because we begin to make different decisions, to relate differently, to act from a place of greater consciousness and authenticity. And when we change our energy, we naturally attract situations and people that are in resonance with that new energy. This new perception also brings us a deep sense of responsibility and empowerment. No longer can we exclusively blame external circumstances for our unhappiness, but neither do we feel powerless in the face of life's challenges. We understand that, although we cannot control everything that happens, we always have the power to choose how to respond. Finally, we come to the point where all this inner transformation manifests tangibly in the world, through conscious action. True spiritual transformation is not just about what we feel or think, but fundamentally about how it translates into our daily actions, how we live, how we relate, how we contribute to the world. Conscious action is qualitatively different from ego-based action. When we act from the ego, Our actions are motivated by fear, desire for approval, need for control, or pursuit of specific results. There is always a hidden agenda, an attempt to manipulate the results to serve the ego's interests. But when we act from our true essence, our actions come from a completely different place. They emerge naturally from our integrity, from our deepest values, from our genuine desire to contribute and express our authenticity in the world. When your life is in harmony with your inner truth, action becomes natural, said Neville Goddard. This phrase perfectly captures the essence of conscious action. We no longer need to force, struggle, or exert ourselves excessively to make things happen. Action flows naturally as an expression of who we are. This doesn't mean life becomes easy, or that we no longer face challenges. It means our relationship with action changes fundamentally. Instead of acting out of fear, desire, or obligation, our actions come from a place of integrity and authenticity. We act because it is consistent with our truth, not because we expect a specific result. Goddard understood that when our external life is aligned with our internal truth, there is a harmony, a natural flow that makes action more effective and satisfying. It's like the difference between swimming against the current and swimming with it. The effort can be the same, but the experience and results are completely different. This is the moment when we stop chasing an imaginary future, always postponing our happiness until we get this or that, and begin to live fully in the present, with clear purpose and direction. The future ceases to be an escape from the present to become a natural extension of how we are living now. Conscious action is also characterized by presence. When we act consciously, we are fully present in what we are doing. We are not mentally elsewhere, planning the next step or reliving the past. We are completely engaged with the present moment, and this makes our actions have a much higher quality and effectiveness. Jung observed that when we integrate our shadow and transcend the limitations of the ego, our actions begin to carry what he called archetypal energy, a force that comes from very deep layers of the human psyche. These actions have an impact that goes beyond what we can rationally calculate, as they are aligned with broader universal forces. When we act from this place of authenticity, our actions inspire others naturally. We don't need to try to influence or convince anyone. Our own integrity becomes a living example that awakens something similar in the people around us. We become catalysts of transformation simply by being who we are authentically. Louise Hay lived this principle exemplarily. Her actions were not motivated by a desire to become famous or rich, although that happened naturally. They came from her genuine experience of healing and her authentic desire to share what she had learned. This authenticity is what made her work so powerful and lasting. Conscious action is also characterized by detachment from results. Paradoxically, when we stop being desperately attached to specific results, our actions become more effective. This happens because attachment to results usually creates anxiety, rigidity, and a desperate energy that actually pushes away what we desire. When we act consciously, we do our part with integrity and excellence, but we surrender the results to the universe. We trust that if our actions are aligned with our truth and serve the greater good, the results will be appropriate, even if they are different from what we initially expected. And this is how true transformation manifests, from the inside out, with every thought, feeling, and action in harmony with our true essence. We no longer live a fragmented life, where our thoughts go in one direction, our feelings in another, and our actions in a third. Everything becomes integrated, coherent, authentic. This integration creates immense inner strength. When all aspects of our being are aligned in the same direction, when there are no more internal conflicts between what we think, feel, and do, our capacity to create positive changes in our life and in the world multiplies exponentially. Spiritual transformation, therefore, is not a final destination, but a way of living. It is a continuous choice to act from our deepest truth, to respond to life's challenges with consciousness and integrity, to express our authenticity even when it requires courage. Jung once said that your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within you that you have built against it. The same principle applies to spiritual transformation as a whole. It's not about adding something new to ourselves, but about removing everything that is not authentically ours so that our true essence can finally shine. When we live this way, when our actions flow naturally from our inner truth, we experience something that few know, a deep sense of alignment, purpose, and peace. Not the peace of the absence of challenges, but the peace that comes from knowing that we are living in accordance with our deepest nature, expressing in the world what we came here to do. This is the promise of true spiritual transformation. Not a life without problems, but a life lived with authenticity, integrity, and purpose. A life where every action is an expression of love. Love for ourselves, love for others, love for life in all its forms. And when we reach this place, we discover that what we always sought outside ourselves, love, peace, abundance, fulfillment, was indeed within us all along, waiting only for us to remove the barriers that we built to protect ourselves, but which ended up imprisoning us. The journey continues, for spiritual transformation is an infinite process of deepening into our true nature. But now we walk with confidence, knowing that every step takes us closer to home. Not a physical home, but the home of our own soul, where we always belong and where we finally find the peace we always sought. Fade out. What if I told you that the person you most need to forgive isn't the one who hurt you, but rather the one who lives in your unconscious? What's more, what if true healing isn't about changing your relationship with your mother, but about changing your relationship with the image of her that still holds power over you? Stay with me, because I'm going to reveal an uncomfortable yet liberating truth, something that can transform the way you live, and I guarantee this will touch you deeply, shaking the very foundations of how you perceive yourself and the world. Get ready for a journey of self-discovery that could redefine your future. This video is for those who are tired of feeling like healing is always one step ahead, a distant promise, a horizon that's never reached. We're going to talk about the silent yet devastating impact of the mother figure on our emotional life, our sense of identity, and how this often invisible influence prevents us from living with total freedom and fulfillment. Based on the revolutionary work of Carl Jung, this won't be a comfortable path. Quite the contrary, it demands a deep dive into old wounds, but it's an absolutely necessary process. Because the naked truth is, until you confront this part of yourself, this shadow that haunts you, healing will never feel complete. You'll continue to feel an emptiness, a void that no external achievement can fill. Now imagine for a moment, with clarity, what it would be like to live without these inner ties that bind you to a past that no longer exists. What would it be like to make important decisions in your life, be they professional, romantic, or personal, without the paralyzing fear of repeating past mistakes or of failing to meet internalized expectations from long ago, perhaps even from your childhood? To achieve this transformative freedom, we need to uncover what influences us invisibly, what drags us back and prevents us from living life fully, authentically, and without regret. And it all begins with a deep understanding of the mother complex and the archetypes it creates and projects into our psyche, shaping our reality in ways we don't even imagine. This is our starting point. The key to achieving this much-desired emotional freedom, this inner peace that seems unattainable, lies in understanding that many of the pains, irrational fears, and blockages we carry aren't actually ours. They weren't born with us. On the contrary, we inherited and internalized them over time, especially through the figures who, ironically, were supposed to be our primary sources of security, love, and unconditional support. When we speak of the mother in this context, we're referring to a figure that isn't strictly limited to the one who physically gave birth to us. It goes much further. We're referring to the archetypal image we've created of her throughout our journey, a psychic construct that resides in our unconscious. This image often can be distorted by our childlike perception, by our unmet needs, and, tragically, it's what traps us in repetitive patterns of behavior and feeling that prevent us from evolving, that keep us from becoming who we truly are. Carl Jung, one of the greatest and most visionary psychologists in human history, a true pioneer of the unconscious, described the mother complex as a deep and powerful psychological pattern that forms in our early childhood and that, without us realizing it, persists throughout our adult lives. This pattern acts almost invisibly, like a hidden script, guiding our emotional reactions, shaping our expectations of others and ourselves, and even determining our most intrinsic behaviors, all without our conscious control. The fundamental question that arises is, how does this happen? What exactly makes up this influential and ubiquitous complex within our psyche? In childhood, our brain is like a sponge, extremely permeable and receptive, avidly absorbing everything around us. We absorb not only information, but energies, emotions, fears, and behavioral patterns, especially those from our primary parental figures. The mother, as the first and most significant attachment figure in a human being's life, plays an absolutely crucial role in forming our initial understanding of the world and, more importantly, of ourselves. She is the one who first teaches us, or doesn't, about security, love, acceptance, and boundaries. And if this figure, for whatever reason, and here it's not about judging but understanding, failed in some way to provide what we needed emotionally to feel secure, loved, and valued, we create deep gaps in our psyche. These gaps, in turn, give rise to behavioral patterns, defense mechanisms, and emotional responses that, unconsciously, we follow and repeat into adulthood, becoming an intrinsic part of who we are. These responses are not just direct reflections of lived experiences, specific traumas, or moments of pain, but are, above all, the result of an internal image of the mother, a psychic representation that we carry within us, and which is often constructed and distorted by our own unconscious, based on our unmet primary needs for love and security, our deepest fears of abandonment, and our unprocessed emotional traumas. Think for a moment about how a child learns to see and interact with the world, how they form their first impressions of reality. The first relationship of affection, unconditional support, security, and emotional nurturing invariably comes from the mother figure. If this initial bond is established in a healthy, secure, and loving way, the child grows with a solid foundation of self-confidence and an innate ability to trust others, to open up to the world without excessive fear. However, if the mother, due to her own limitations, traumas, or life circumstances, fails in some way to provide this fundamental emotional security, the child, in their vulnerability, begins to desperately and unconsciously seek other ways to fill this void. They have no alternative but to internalize this experience. It is in this process that we create images of our mother that can be shaped not by objective reality, but by our own unconscious, based on our urgent needs for love and security, our most primitive fears of abandonment, and our deepest emotional traumas. This image becomes a filter, a lens through which we see the world and ourselves. Now we come to the big question, the one that truly matters and that many of you must be asking. How does this often distorted and unconscious inner image of the mother affect our current relationships, our life choices, our most important decisions, and even our self-esteem and sense of worth in adult life? The first answer to this complex question reveals itself when you constantly feel you're seeking approval from others, even without consciously realizing this pursuit. It may be that inexplicably, you feel distrustful of genuine love offered to you, have enormous difficulty trusting people's intentions around you, or persistently feel that you'll never be good enough, no matter how hard you try. All of this happens because the internalized mother archetype, in its darker or distorted form, did not provide you with the emotional security, validation, and unconditional love that was so necessary for your formation. This maternal archetype, when internalized in its unbalanced or distorted form, can manifest in very subtle and insidious ways, like a constant inner voice that relentlessly demands from you, severely criticizes you, or demands unattainable perfection in everything you do. And because this archetype was deeply internalized in childhood, etched into the deepest layers of your unconscious, it's not a simple external demand, an outside opinion you can ignore. On the contrary, it's an internal demand, a cruel self-exaction that persistently echoes within you, a dissonant melody that never stops playing. It shapes not only how you see yourself, but even more dangerously, how you believe, deep down in your being, that others see you. This is a true invisible emotional prison, a cage built by old beliefs and fears that prevents you from achieving genuine emotional freedom and the success, fulfillment, and peace that you so deeply desire and deserve in life. This mother complex goes far beyond the simple and understandable fear of failure or of not being good enough. It is reflected, comprehensively and often incapacitatingly, in practically all areas of your life, from your performance at work, your ability to prosper financially, to the quality and depth of your personal relationships, be they romantic, family, or friendships. If you constantly find yourself trapped in a pattern of self-sabotage, repetitively and frustratingly, always moving away from happiness, success, peace, or abundance when they seem to be within your grasp, the time has come to bravely and honestly investigate this intricate and hidden relationship with the maternal image that was internalized in your psyche. It can undoubtedly be the invisible block, the anchor that prevents you from moving forward, from evolving, from transforming, and from reaching your full potential. As we grow and venture into adult life, we begin, almost automatically and unconsciously, to project these internalized patterns of the mother figure onto all our significant relationships. Whether with close friends, romantic partners, the person you share your life with, or even colleagues and superiors, you might start to notice that you are subtly, yet persistently, seeking a mother figure in each of these people. Someone to fill the emotional gaps that were left open. You unconsciously expect others to save you from your pains, to heal you from your old wounds, or to support you unconditionally, even when they bear no responsibility for the pain you carry within. This unconscious projection of the maternal archetype, residing in the depths of your being, causes you to place unrealistic expectations on those around you. You expect them to miraculously and completely fulfill all the emotional needs that went unmet during your childhood, those which the original mother figure, for her own reasons and limitations, couldn't satisfy. The big problem and the source of immense frustration is that when others inevitably fail to meet these unattainable expectations, after all, they are human beings with their own imperfections and limitations, you feel abandoned again, deeply devalued, and with a painful sense of emptiness, as if the original wound has been reopened. However, the real issue and the core of the problem are not with others, their failures, or their inabilities. The fundamental question is what you are projecting onto them, what lens you are using to perceive them. Genuine and lasting healing begins when you realize with crystal clarity that these patterns of expectation and frustration are not real. They do not belong to the present. They are merely distorted echoes of an image that was deeply internalized in your past, a reflection of your own unmet needs. As you persist in projecting these childlike expectations onto others, you end up creating a vicious cycle of disappointment and pain. You expect something grand and saving from others, but paradoxically, you cannot fully receive it, because deep down in your being, what you seek is something that can only be found and healed within yourself. It is an external search for an internal solution. When you grasp this complex dynamic, when the penny finally drops and this understanding hits you, you begin to see healing no longer as an incessant search for something or someone external to complete you, but rather as a personal and non-transferable journey of self-discovery and empowerment. It is at this moment that you take responsibility for your own happiness and emotional well-being. Now let's explore something much deeper, invisible and for many uncomfortable to admit, the invisible loyalty that a huge number of people carry towards their mother or their maternal lineage. This concept, brilliantly described by Bert Hellinger, the founder of family constellations, reveals that often the visceral fear of healing, of moving forward in life, of prospering, and of achieving full happiness stems from a feeling of unconscious betrayal towards the mother figure. At the deepest level of your being, you might feel that overcoming the difficulties, traumas, or limitations that your mother faced, or that she represents to you, is in some way a betrayal of her, an abandonment of your place within the family system. This invisible loyalty manifests in unexpected and painful ways, often culminating in disguised self-sabotage. You might start to notice that, at crucial moments in your life, precisely when you are about to succeed, achieve a great goal, start a happy relationship, prosper financially, or find inner peace, something mysterious and inexplicable seems to prevent you from moving forward. It's as if you have an invisible mental block, an inner force that makes you pull away from your own happiness, your own well-deserved success. This is not an accident, it's not bad luck, and it's certainly not a character flaw. It is invisible loyalty in action, operating in the shadows of your unconscious. You feel, at the deepest and often unarticulated level, that by being successful, by healing yourself, by finding your own light, you are leaving behind your mother's or your family's difficulties, pains, or frustrations. Or even worse, you might feel that you are emotionally distancing yourself from her, breaking a silent pact to remain loyal to her reality, however limiting it may be. This is an insidious pattern that may be repeating tirelessly in your life without you realizing its true origin. Invisible loyalty is an extremely powerful psychological force. It acts silently, insidiously, and in the vast majority of cases, without us having the slightest awareness of it. It's like an invisible thread that connects and binds us to a destiny that is not our own, for a sense of belonging and solidarity. When you decide, consciously or not, to leave behind the pain, limitations, and burdens that the mother complex has imposed on your life, you may feel at an unconscious and deeply rooted level that you are betraying your mother or the patterns of your family system. This feeling of betrayal, however irrational it may seem to the conscious mind, can be one of the greatest and most difficult obstacles to your true healing, to your genuine emotional freedom, and to your well-deserved happiness. Freeing yourself from this invisible and often crushing weight is an absolutely fundamental and liberating step for your journey of self-transformation, allowing you to live your own life with your own choices and your own destiny. Now we arrive at the crucial point, the essence of true healing and transformation. The solution to pain doesn't come from changing others, trying to fix your mother, or expecting the external world to perfectly align with your expectations and needs. True and profound transformation begins within you, with an incredibly powerful and liberating process called reparenting. To reparent yourself essentially means to become the mother figure and father figure, if needed, you never had, but always desperately needed. This isn't just about being superficially kind to yourself. It's an act of radical self-love, of giving yourself the care, emotional nourishment, validation, and unconditional love that you always needed, but, due to circumstances beyond your control, never consistently and fully received. When you commit to the process of reparenting yourself, you begin, for the first time in your adult life, to listen to your deepest inner needs, those silent voices that have been stifled for so long, and more importantly, you begin to meet them in a conscious and loving way. This doesn't mean being overly indulgent with yourself, giving in to every whim, or avoiding discipline. On the contrary, it's about being firm, disciplined, and deeply compassionate with yourself. You start treating your own emotions, your fears, your vulnerabilities, and your most authentic needs as a healthy and loving mother or father would treat their child, with unconditional love that validates, but also with clear boundaries, healthy guidance, and the wisdom of someone who wants your highest good. This process is absolutely transformative because, from this point forward, you stop being passively governed by the distorted, internalized image of the mother, by the shadow of the past, and you begin to live your own life more authentically, more healthily, and finally, more freely. Reparenting yourself also involves a deep and often painful act of healing, forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for not having been able in the past to give yourself the love, protection, and care you so desperately needed, for not having been able to meet your own emotional needs in moments of vulnerability. This process of self-forgiveness can be extremely challenging, as it requires you to look at your own flaws and limitations with compassion, but it is also one of the most liberating things you can do on your journey. It represents reconciliation with your own history, with your pains and weaknesses, and fundamentally, the unconditional acceptance that you are worthy of love, care, success, and happiness, regardless of what happened in the past or the failures of others. It is an act of self-love that rescues your inner child and leads them onto a path of peace. The true and lasting emotional freedom arises when you decide, of course, and unshakably, to no longer allow the wounds and traumas of the past to define who you are in the present or who you will be in the future. You may indeed have lost what you needed from your mother or your father or other important figures in your life, and that pain is real and valid. But that loss, however deep, does not mean you need to continue living forever in the shadow of those absences or those pains. Releasing the past doesn't mean denying your pain. pretending it didn't exist or forgetting what happened. On the contrary, it means, above all, choosing not to let that pain control your present and future life, not allowing it to be the only compass guiding you. When you begin to fully identify with the adult version of yourself, with the mature, capable, and conscious person who can take care of, protect, and make authentic decisions based on your deepest values and desires, you begin to create a new story. A story in which the past, with all its shadows and limitations, no longer governs your actions, your choices, and your emotional reactions. This, it's important to emphasize, doesn't happen all at once, like a switch flipping. It's a continuous process, a journey of patience and perseverance, where you gradually, with each conscious decision, break the invisible chains that bind you to old patterns and create a new narrative for your life. A narrative based on clear, authentic choices and intentions aligned with your true purpose. The question that arises now is, what do you want to create for your life from now on? What kind of future do you want to build, free from the echoes of the past? Releasing the past requires an immense dose of courage. Courage to squarely face what marked you, the deepest pains, the oldest disappointments, and to say with firmness and conviction, "This will no longer define me. I am not my pain. I am not my past." When you do this, when this declaration becomes an unshakable truth in your heart, you begin to free yourself from the cycle of pain, suffering, and repetitive patterns, creating a sacred and fertile space for a lighter, more conscious, more fulfilling life, full of new possibilities. You open the doors to your own emotional resurrection. Now that you've been able to dive deep and understand what lies behind the mother complex, and how this often hidden internal image shapes your life in ways you might never have imagined, it's time to take the next step. This isn't a video about waiting for others to change, nor about waiting for your mother to be different, or for the world to adjust to your expectations. The true and radical change begins when you consciously and with total clarity of purpose decide to stop identifying with that distorted image from the past. It's when you choose, with your deepest will, to be the person you always needed, the adult and loving figure who will take care of yourself, protect yourself, validate yourself, and no longer live to please others or seek external validation that will never fully arrive. The moral of this story, of this journey of self-discovery, is simple yet powerful. You are no longer that vulnerable and dependent child who needed their mother, or any other figure, to feel secure, loved, or complete. You have the intrinsic power to rewrite your own story, to create a new legacy for yourself. And most importantly, you have the innate ability to free yourself from that internal figure that for so long limited you, paralyzed you, and prevented you from living your life in its totality. The true power, the true strength, and the true freedom lie in choosing every day, with every decision, with every breath, to be the best and most authentic version of yourself. And that begins now, at this very moment, with an internal decision, an unwavering commitment to your own happiness and liberation. If you were able to connect deeply with this reflection, if this message resonated in your heart and touched a wound or awakened a truth, don't forget to like this video. Leave your comment sharing your insights and, most importantly, share this content with someone you know also needs to hear this liberating message. Your action helps bring this transformative truth to more people. Thank you so much for being here. Until the next video.